Within 2 decades, 95% of Florida's orange crop disappeared. Polk County to Indian River, all of it. Florida once produced 95% of America's orange juice. Nearly every glass was coming from the same state. While Trevor Murphy, a third-generation grower, was deciding whether to sell his land, the country next door, hit by the same disease, barely lost a harvest. The disease has no cure, but that's not why Florida lost. In the late 1990s, before all of it disappeared, you could walk through central Florida and smell the orange blossoms from the highway. Groves stretched from both sides of the road to the horizon. Polk County, Highlands County, Indian River, Valencia on the late-season trees, Hamlin on the early. Citrus packers on every county road. Welcome centers handing free cups of juice to every tourist who crossed the state line. A tradition since 1949. The state flower was the orange blossom. The state beverage was orange juice. 2 of its counties were named for the crop. Florida didn't have a citrus industry. Florida was a citrus industry. The trees had been there for 500 years. Spanish explorers planted the first citrus near St. Augustine in the 1500s. For centuries, orange trees grew wild along rivers and mission settlements. Sour orange rootstock, tough, drought-resistant, adapted to sandy soil, became the foundation every commercial grove would be built on. The industry took off when the railroads arrived in the 1880s. The Great Freeze of 1894 to 95 wiped out most of the groves and pushed the industry south. The growers who survived rebuilt. By 1950, over 100 million boxes a year. By 1970, 200 million. By the late 1990s, over 832,000 acres, 76,000 jobs, and a $9 billion industry. The juice processors built the empire. Tropicana, founded in Bradenton, Florida in 1947, grew into a brand worth billions by the time PepsiCo acquired it in 1998. Minute Maid, owned by Coca-Cola, processed millions of boxes annually. Florida's Natural, a cooperative of over 1,000 grower families, marketed itself on the promise that every carton came from Florida oranges. At peak, over 40 processing facilities operated across the state. 95% of all Florida oranges went to juice. The economics favored scale. Large, continuous groves, uniform varieties, mechanical harvesting. The industry consolidated around what squeezed best, not what survived best. And nearly the entire industry ran on a handful of rootstocks. Sour orange had been the standard for decades. It tolerated Florida's alkaline soil, resisted root rot, and produced the highest quality fruit. But sour orange had one fatal weakness: citrus Tristeza virus. When the brown citrus aphid arrived in Florida in 1995, Tristeza killed trees on sour orange rootstocks across the state, part of the global death toll that eventually reached 100 million trees. The industry pivoted to Swingle Citramello and Carrizo Citrange. These rootstocks tolerated Tristeza. They did not tolerate what came next. In 1998, 3 years after the aphid, something else arrived in Florida, a tiny insect. The Asian citrus psyllid, no bigger than a grain of rice. Nobody panicked, they should have. The first confirmed case of Huanglongbing citrus greening appeared in Backyard Citrus near Homestead, South Florida, in August 2005. Within 3 years, it had spread to virtually every citrus-producing county in the state. The biology is ruthless. The psyllid lands on new growth, the tender flush of a young leaf. It feeds for minutes. In that time, it injects a bacterium called Candidus liberacter asiaticus directly into the phloem, the vascular system that carries sugars from leaves to roots. The bacteria multiplies, clogs the phloem, and slowly starves the tree from the inside. Roots die first. 30 to 50% of the root system is gone before the canopy shows a single yellow leaf. By the time a grower sees the blotchy mottling on the foliage, the tree has been dying underground for months. The fruit tells the rest of the story. Oranges on infected trees stay small, lopsided, green on the bottom where they should be orange. Cut one open and the core is curved. The seeds aborted, the juice bitter and salty. They drop before harvest. The ones that don't aren't worth picking. The numbers fell off of a cliff. Florida produced 242 million boxes in 2003 to 2004. By 2008, 170 million. By 2015, 97 million. By 2020, 67 million. The 2022-23 season, 15.8 million boxes, the worst harvest in nearly a century. The 2024-25 forecast, 12 million. Acreage that had topped 832,000 fell below 275,000 by 2024. Over 557,000 acres gone. 5 Florida counties lost 90% or more of their citrus land. Orange County barely grows the fruit it's named for. I need to say this plainly because the scale of it is hard to hold in your head. 20 years, hundreds of millions in research dollars, and scientists still cannot grow this bacterium in a lab. They cannot culture it, cannot study it the way they study almost every other plant pathogen on Earth. Every treatment, antibiotics, nutritional supplements, reflective mulch, protective screens, is a workaround. None of them stop the spread, the disease just keeps moving. So what could Florida have done? Look at Brazil. Sao Paulo State discovered the same disease in 2004, a year before Florida. Same bacterium, same psyllid vector, same lack of a cure. Brazil mandated aggressive removal of every infected tree. Growers scouted their orchards, identified symptomatic trees, and destroyed them, eliminating the inoculum before psyllids could carry it to the next grove. Large growers coordinated area-wide psyllid control, spraying not just their own land, but neighboring properties and backyard trees within a 4-kilometer radius. One operation, Cambui, saw its annual infection rate drop from 3.5% to below 2%, a return of $30 for every dollar spent on neighborhood coordination. Florida recommended the same 3-pronged approach: disease-free nursery stock, psyllid control, infected tree removal. But Florida never mandated removal. Thousands of small growers, backyard citrus in every suburb, no coordinated regional management. The inoculum stayed in the ground. Growers sprayed insecticides but refused to pull infected trees. Each one still produced some fruit, and replacing a mature grove cost years and tens of thousands per acre. A 2024 review in the Annual Review of Phytopathology documented the comparison. Brazil continued and improved its management procedures and suffered relatively little overall production loss. Florida's production dropped approximately 80%. The data was right there in the USDA forecasts. Season after season, the decline was not invisible. It was tracked, published, and filed. Same disease, same decade, one country organized, the other didn't. Florida didn't lose to the bacterium, it lost to its own structure. 1,000 growers, each making the rational choice to keep their own infected trees standing while the inoculum spread to everyone else's. No one could afford to act alone, and no one built a system to act together. If you saw my video on how one genetic shortcut nearly destroyed America's corn crop, this is the same pattern. An industry that watched the warnings accumulate in the file and didn't act until the damage was done. If you missed it, go check it out. Instead of replanting, Florida's growers started selling. The state added 467,000 residents in a single year. Developers needed land. Former groves in Hendry and Collier counties lost over 30,000 acres between 2020 and 2023. A 33% decline in 3 years. Medium home prices in those counties jumped 55 to 64%. Citrus land that sold for $5,000 an acre fetched $25,000 or more once rezoned for housing. In 2024, over 28,700 acres changed hands, double the prior year. In early 2025, Alico Incorporated, one of Florida's largest citrus operations, over 53,000 acres, announced it was exiting citrus entirely. Production had declined 73% in a decade. CEO John Kernan said the long-term trend no longer supported expectations for recovery. The company pivoted to a land development strategy valued at up to $750 million. The groves would become subdivisions. That's the number that stopped me. $750 million, not in oranges, but in the land the oranges used to grow on. A company that spent generations farming concluded the dirt was worth more without the trees. That's not a pivot, that's an ending. Today the juice cartons still say Florida on some of them, but major brands that once sourced exclusively from the state now blend with imports from Brazil, Mexico, and Chile. Orange juice concentrate prices have nearly doubled since 2020. California has overtaken Florida as the nation's leading citrus producer. The number of Florida growers dropped 69% between 2002 and 2022. Processing plants fell from 41 to 14. Researchers at the University of Florida are working on genetically modified trees that produce a protein lethal to the psyllids larvae, but commercial planting is still years away. New HLB-tolerant rootstocks have been released, and a mandarin variety called Sugar Bell has shown unexpected resilience. Small lifelines thrown to an industry that has already lost most of its water. Meanwhile, Polk County, more citrus acreage than any county in Florida, had more people move into it in 2023 than any county in the country. Murphy's father's 20-acre grove is still standing. The tract homes press in from every side. At some point, he told the AP this isn't going to be an orange grove anymore. For 500 years, citrus trees grew in Florida, planted by missionaries, expanded by railroad speculators, industrialized by juice processors, and woven so deeply into the state's identity that its counties, its flour, and its beverage were all named for the crop. Then a bacterium arrived in a psyllid no bigger than the head of a pin. Brazil proved it could be contained. Florida proved what happens when containment requires an industry to act as one, and no one asks it to. The USDA published the production forecast every season. The IFAS surveys documented the infection rates county by county. The annual review of phytopathology laid the Sao Paulo comparison on the table in black and white. The whole record was there, tracked, published, and filed for 20 years while the groves came down and the houses went up. Nobody opened it. The detail I can't shake is Orange County, an entire county named for a crop that vanished from it while people were still living there. That kind of loss doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates until someone looks around and realizes the groves are gone. If you learn something from this one, a like means more than you'd think. And if you know someone in Florida who remembers when the groves went all the way to the horizon, send it their way.